I have to look at that. Perfect.
Thank you, Zara, for reminding me to restart the recording. That was great. So I'm going to just say, for the purposes of the recording, that Munira and I have introduced ourselves and asked everyone to put their current details in the chat. Let us know who you are, how old your kids are. And I can see that we've got everything from Zara's 2 months old all the way up to 5 years old in the chat. And here are some of the listening challenges that you asked us about, that you mentioned. Sorry, I got thrown by forgetting to hit record. So we had tantrums. Tantrums came up a lot. Tantrums, transitions, tantrums when we're transitioning. A lot of screaming happening in your house, especially when kids don't get what they want, or else when we say no to them. That seems to be the default response, is to shout, scream, or generally be upset. And then there is a frustration too from some of your children about not being understood when they're trying to communicate. So obviously when children are acquiring language skills, it can be frustrating that they are saying a word and we have absolutely no idea what they're saying. There was quite a lot of, my child won't listen to me or won't do what I want them to do. And quite frankly, they won't do anything that they don't want to do. So we are all finding that we are repeating ourselves constantly. And there was this big question that came up as well. Is it that they don't understand what I'm asking? Is it that they're not hearing me? Or is it that they're just not listening? And what's the difference between hearing and listening? That's probably repeating myself, but you felt like you were being ignored. And then this point about, when you're just trying to put another child to bed, quite often the baby, then the older child seems to find that is the best time to make a lot of noise. Is there anything I have missed on this list of our listening challenges?
Thank you so much, Laura. We have Yashmin that just joined us. Hi, Yashmin, and Amy. Hello.
Hi, hello.
I think Amy is Victoria.
Oh, Victoria.
Yes, Amy is Victoria. So here is the difficulty. If we were not listened to as children, then we grow up to be adults who don't believe in ourselves, who don't believe that people want to hear our point of view. And sometimes we don't believe that we have the answers in ourselves. We don't think we know the right thing to do. So that is really one of the reasons why we're looking at listening from a very early age. We're going to go over to Munira for our first activity.
Thank you so much. This is one of my favorite activities, and I love to start my workshops with them. We are going to switch our ears on. And we do this, and you can actually feel the difference. It's a little magical, actually. I want you to sit up straight and turn your head over and look behind. Sorry, you can't hear me if I turn around. Look behind your shoulder and see how far back you can turn. Do it on one side and then on the other. Turn your neck all the way back and then come to the front. Now I want you to take both hands, warm up your fingertips and hold on to the bottom of your ears. Really squeeze your earlobes and move up towards the top. So you're going all the way up. Unroll those curls, really get in, press and squeeze and give like a little ear hug. And come back down to the bottom and give your lobes a nice big squeeze. Now I want you to turn your head and see if your head can turn further back than before. You can see more than you saw before. And what this exercise really does is it helps you focus, it helps you activate your muscles, and it switches on. It sends lots of blood to your ears, to your head, to your neck, and it really wakes you up and gets you ready for listening. Now, this is a difficult activity to do with young children, especially if your child is having a bit of difficulties at the moment. You cannot say, okay, now hold your ears and listen up. It doesn't always work. What I like to do with my little one is to use this exercise as a prevention. So before I'm about to say something, I would come down to her level, be on my knees, squeeze a little bit on her earlobes, if I have enough time to go around all the way, and say, okay, this is our plan of how we're going to get to school today. Number 1, number 2, number 3. And it really, really helps with connection, really helps to activate the brain and body to get into action, and really helps her to stay focused and attentive. So why is listening so important? Listening is a survival skill. It helps us to communicate effectively. Communication is 70 to 80% of our waking time is spent on communication. And this means that we use it all the time and we need it. And the better we are at it, the better we can interact with those around us. Listening is the foundation of our social skills, that is our interpersonal skills, our relationships, our friendships, how we manage things at school, and one day when our kids grow up, how we manage things at work. So it's a huge, huge part of what we learn to do as human beings, and it keeps us connected to the rest of the world. And we don't always have to do a listening skills workshop when things are going wrong. Listening skills is for everybody. There are things in this exercise, in this workshop that you can use yourself to help connect with others and those around you. I'm going to pass on to Laura for the next one. Oh no, that is me. What will we cover tonight? We're going to look at the challenges with getting children to listen. And we want to understand the processes involved in listening. What are the steps to get a child to listen? What are the steps in this concept of listening? And we'd like to share parenting tools and sensory insights and solutions. So we're going to look at our challenges, or we have looked at our challenges. We're going to talk about how it works, and then we're going to talk about solutions. Now I can pass over to Laura.
You definitely can. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing for a bit so that I can see you all a bit more easily. If you can turn your video on, then that would be great. Don't worry if you can't. I already had a message from Victoria, who's named as Amy, saying that she can't turn her video on. Don't worry about that. But if you can, I'm going to make some requests of you. Hi, Yasmin. And I'm going to invite you to join in. You might feel a little bit foolish joining in, but trust me and trust the process. Are you ready? Thank you. Okay. Don't smile. Don't look at me. Don't cross your legs. Don't put your arms by your sides. Don't stay seated. Don't stay still. Don't close your mouth. Don't stay standing. Thank you. Does anyone want to share with me, just one person, what you were thinking, feeling, or deciding when you were hearing all of that? Yasmin.
Yeah, I wanted to do everything you told me not to do.
Were you feeling rebellious?
It came out, all I heard was the second word, not the don't.
Okay, so that's what you were deciding. You wanted to do everything I told you not to do. How are you feeling?
I don't know, just a bit awkward.
Awkward. Especially when I told you all not to stay still.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
As you were telling me not to do things, yeah, I mean, like I said, I just kept hearing, like, I heard the don't, but it's what went through my mind was the verb of it. So like, don't sit, and I was like, okay, I'll sit. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to give another series of invitations. And again, I'd like you to follow them, if you will. Make a thinking face. Look around the room that you're sitting in. Place both feet on the floor. Cross your arms. Stand up. Move around slowly. Take a seat. Give yourselves a round of applause. Would someone else like to share what they were thinking, feeling, and deciding? Yeah, just unmute yourselves, just go for it.
Hello. It was just much clear. It was clear what you wanted me to do. The last time it was like you were telling me not to do something, but I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do instead. So this time it was very easy to follow the instructions because it was very clear what you wanted.
Okay, so that's what you were thinking. You were thinking, oh, it's clear. And so you were deciding, right, I'm going to follow them because Laura says I should. How were you feeling? Did you feel any differently to the first time?
I kind of had a sense of what was coming, so it was a little bit slightly less awkward than last time, but you kind of knew what to expect. So
yeah, feeling less
a little
awkward.
bit.
Thank you.
And I was deciding whether to do it or not, but I wasn't really even deciding because I had already decided that I was going to participate. So.
You decided. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else like to share? Rishiko, did you want to share earlier?
I think I had a similar reaction, like in the first set of exercises, not doing something was harder because it was like, what do I do instead? This was easier. I still felt a little bit rebellious, I guess. I was not sure why I was being told to do so many things. I wasn't sure, yeah.
Well, you were feeling rebellious and confused?
Yeah, I guess. I was like, but why should I do these things?
Thank you. What do you think the purpose of this exercise was? I mean, hopefully none of you think Laura's doing this on purpose just to make us look silly.
It's probably to feel like what our kids must feel like when we always constantly give them or tell them how to behave or what to do or not to do.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, to have a feeling of what it feels like to be a child, hearing lots of things. Anything else? Hi, Catherine. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
So I'm going to give you some clues. And in fact, Yasmin, you were saying it right at the beginning when you were talking about, you heard what I told you not to do, and you did, and you wanted to do the opposite. It's like if I said to you all, don't think about a pink elephant, then what you do in your brain is, first of all, you think of a pink elephant. And that's also what children need to do. So firstly, we're all hardwired to listen out to sentence structure. So when we're hearing a long sentence, we really, like the beginning of the sentence, we barely hear it at all. We sometimes hear the middle, but what we're focusing on is on the end of the sentence. And you know that moment where you're giving us an instruction and somebody interrupts you. It happened to me in a school last week. I started explaining what I wanted the kids to do, and a girl kind of sticks her hand up because she's really keen, and she's like, "Oh, miss, da-da-da." I'm like, well, actually, that wasn't what I was going to say, because we tend to load meaning into the end of our sentences. And so because we know that's what's going to happen, then that's what we're listening out for, to hear the intent behind the whole sentence. That's one point. The second point is actually that young children's brains are much more concrete. So they are listening for the thing to do. And they're not so good at focusing on abstract. And the don't, or the negative, is a really abstract thing, because we can't make a picture of an absence of something. And so when we tell our children, don't run, then actually they don't know what they need to do. And so what we can do instead is tell them what we want them to do. So instead of saying don't run, if we tell them walk or hop or skip or jump or whatever it is that we want them to do, then it's already much easier for children to understand, to listen to what we're saying and to be able to do it. Because when we're doing those negative instructions, then actually our brain is having to listen twice. We hear the don't smile. So first of all, we hear smile, and then we kind of have to go back in our brains and replay the sentence, hear that there was a negative, and then follow out. And you'll have seen and felt when I was giving those instructions, it was much quicker and much more fluid for you to follow the second set of instructions because they were positive. Has anyone got any questions about that exercise? Lauren.
Is that a unique to English thing, or does that apply across all languages?
Thank you. That's a great question. I'm not an expert in this. I did a little bit of bilingual studies back at university, and I know that there's a difference in terms of where you tend to put the verb. So in German, for example, the verb will come right at the end. And so even more so in many senses in German, that you're listening for that action that you need to carry out at the end of the sentence. I haven't seen further research. I've got a friend who is a speech and language therapist. I'll ask her, because it's a really interesting question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Someone else was waving their hands with a question, but I can't see everybody, so you do need to just speak out. No, we good?
I think so. I don't see any hands.
Okay. So I'm going to invite you to be a child. Don't necessarily be your child, but pick a child of kind of 3-4 years old. And again, I'm going to read you a series of statements. And at the end of it, I'm going to ask you those same 3 questions. What are you thinking, feeling, and deciding? And why do we ask those 3 questions? Because actually, by not just connecting our brains, but also connecting our bodies and our feelings to something, then that really helps us to make a shift in how we relate to our children. So are you ready? Pick up your book, put on your coat, be quiet. Wow. Hold my hand, please. Stop bouncing on the bed. Be careful. Come here and let me put your pajamas on. It'll go quicker. Stop it. Would someone like to share what they were thinking, feeling, or deciding? Jennifer.
If somebody else
Go
wants
on.
to go, I will. Oh, no, go ahead.
We'll hear from Jennifer this time.
I was just saying, I think I used all of those phrases at least once today.
Okay, so you put your adult brain back in. Come and be a child.
Well, I don't know. I guess you weren't listening to maybe what I would want to do, or maybe taking into account what I was wanting to do at that moment, or thinking, or I just had to follow what you said without any reason behind it, maybe.
That's what you were thinking. I just have to do what the adult is telling me. How did you feel when you heard them?
Maybe frustrated.
Frustrated. What were you deciding?
Whether to follow you or not.
Trying to decide. And what did you decide?
Probably a good idea.
Probably a good idea. Wow. Anyone else felt something different or made different decisions?
Yeah. I'll
Go for it, Yashmi.
When I first heard it, I sort of went, okay, yes, I can do this. And I wanted to listen. And then like by the fourth or fifth thing, it was like, okay, this is just getting to be too much. And then by the end, yeah, I was like, no.
You're like, no way.
Yeah, no, I'm done.
I'm out the door. Thank you. How about you, Catherine?
Yeah, I think I felt like sort of annoyed, like, why? No, I'm not gonna do that. Don't want to.
Don't want to. No
Yeah.
way.
No way. Stop telling me what to do, sort of. Yeah, and I think, but it all has to do probably with having no real foundation for, just not understanding, the reasoning behind something. Just sort of when like commands are shouted at you like that. Yeah.
I'm going to read you a second set of statements. And again, we'll ask you, I'll ask you what you're thinking, feeling, and deciding. It's more fun if we work together. What do you want me to do to help? And what will you do? What do you need to wear so that you'll be warm outside? What voice do we use when baby is sleeping? Where do we sit when we eat dinner? Do you want to hold my hand or hold on to the stroller? Wow, it looks like you've got loads of energy tonight. Do you want to go back on the trampoline instead of having story? Where's a good place to put your cup so that it won't spill? Do you want me to time you getting into your pajamas? Who'd like to share what they were thinking, feeling, or deciding?
Can I share?
Sure.
It seems to me like you're sort of like giving the kids options, kind of like recognizing their sort of thoughts and feelings, like recognizing them as a person instead of someone just to be ordered around, giving them a choice, like, do you want to hold my hand or the stroller, or letting them kind of at least feel like they're deciding in the matter, even if they're not really, but like, letting them feel like they've been implicated in what's happening, sort of.
Okay, I'm going to, Catherine, I'm going to interrupt you.
Okay.
That's you as an adult looking at those things.
Yeah.
As a child, what were you,
Okay.
how did you feel?
As a child, so I think I would be more sort of curious about, I don't know, do I want to hold on to the stroller or my mom's hand? Do I want to jump on the trampoline or keep reading a book? Like, having the options makes you more curious, and like, I'm gonna try one of those, sort of. And I think I would like feeling like something was my idea, sort of.
You're feeling curious, and you were thinking that some of them were your ideas. I'm going to come back to something that you raised of there was a choice, but there wasn't really. So hold on to that bit of it. I'm going to ask somebody else. What were you thinking?
Raised the hand. Tiana,
Tiana.
It's okay. It's okay if there's somebody else that wants to go. It's fine.
No, I'd love to hear from you. It's been a while. I'm going to pick on Kimmy at some point so that she knows she's been forewarned. But
what was I thinking, feeling, and doing?
Yeah, as a child, what were you thinking, feeling, and deciding about?
Well, just feeling involved. Feeling involved. Yeah.
Thank you. And what were you deciding? Hang on, Kimmy, I'll come to you. What were you deciding, Tiana?
To be involved.
To be involved. Thank you. Kimberly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I felt like you actually wanted my input. Like, I needed to respond. Like, there were questions, so it was actually you were soliciting a response from me, and not just like telling me what to do. I had to actually make a decision, or like I had to think to give a response. Like, what voice do we use when the baby's sleeping? Oh, okay, wait a minute. Yeah, that's right. Okay, I had to you were soliciting a response from me, so it wasn't just like giving orders.
I wasn't giving orders.
And it made me...
So you get to choose. Do you want mum 1 or mum 2? Which parent would be helpful? Okay, what did you learn from doing this activity?
Formulating questions to get your child to do something that they need to do or you want them to do is probably a useful strategy.
Thank you. Anyone else?
For me, I think in terms of feelings, I think in the first part, I could feel some kind of frustration and anger in your voice. And in the second one, I could feel some kind of love and care in your voice. So as a mother, I guess for me, like apart from the words, I would also like to kind of channel like care rather than channel frustration, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Rishika. Definitely the tone that we use. So about 97%, 93%, I can't remember the exact statistic of what we communicate is paraverbal. So it's not the words, it's everything that goes with it. So our hands, our body, our smile, our eyes, and also our tone. I think that I varied the tone a lot in the first exercise. So some of them were whispered, some I was intending to be angry, but some of them I felt like I was trying to use a warm tone, even though it was just a statement. So it's interesting to hear that even if that's what I think I'm communicating, that's not what you felt, perhaps because they were orders and because some of them were definitely me being pretty annoyed that you hadn't brushed your teeth or whatever the thing was you were supposed to be doing at the time. Anyone learn something different? Got something to add?
I don't know if this was addressed already. I'm sorry, I had to leave for a bit. I'm really annoyed about this, but I know like keeping your calm and forming questions and involving your child in that decision will help them maybe listen more. But what if it's just, what if you're, you've had that bad day and you just cannot do that? Like you cannot get your brain to form that question and you have to order them because it's just, you just need them to go to sleep. Like just go to sleep right now. Like, stop playing with your toys. This is not the time for that. And then obviously that just makes it worse because when you're angry, then they're just not going to sleep because you're not being nice to them. You're not, like, please, like, let me help you. So what do you do then? Like that, for me, that is the struggle. Like I have to fix myself before I can, like, I need to be in a calm, I notice that because when I am in a calm, collected spaces where she does respond better.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And we had Catherine's point about, did the child get a choice or not? Maybe I'll start with did the child get a choice? Because that's the easier one to answer. Yes, absolutely. It's the tough one, isn't it? So it is. So you'll notice some of those things were questions like, what do we need to wear in order to be warm outside? Or I think that comes back, Rishika, to one of your questions of how do I get my child to wear warm clothes? Okay, I'm not the person to ask about that because my kids are still wearing shorts to school. Okay, so I cannot answer that question directly. But what I can tell you is that there are things that we as a parent are responsible for. None of you would let yours too wearing shorts, Tiana. Like, it's not just mine. So none of us would let a 2-year-old walk out across a busy street, cross a 3-lane highway by themselves. In the same way, you wouldn't let them not brush their teeth for a year on end. Okay, maybe you would, but then that means that you've got a better dentist than I do and you don't have to pay them. So we're taking responsibility for our children. So some of those things we are deciding, and within that we give them limited choices, red toothbrush or blue toothbrush. So watch out for how you ask your questions, because if you say to your child, do you want to brush your teeth? Even though it's a question, then the answer is no way. And then you're stuck. So phrase the questions within the framework that you have decided on as parents. Now we come to the harder question. What do we do when we don't have the time or the patience? So I think for me, part of that answer is actually it's about prevention. And if I had one thing that I would like to transmit to parents is that it's about self-care. We need to be taking good care of ourselves in every area of life. And believe me, I'm preaching to myself because I had to join another coaches call to make me make an agreement with myself about self-care because I'm not good at doing it for myself. But that's what we need to do, is be taking good care of ourselves so that we are then available for our children. But it's not the topic of tonight, but I want to say something about when we have a flipped lid. If you don't know what I mean by a flipped lid, then message me afterwards. We'll talk about it another time. But when we are wound up, annoyed, irritated, then we cannot respond to our children in a loving and gentle way. And so we need to take care of ourselves first. The belly breaths are probably the quickest and easiest way to do it. When we can't, then it's safer to, when you can do it safely, leave your children, close the door, take those deep breaths, do whatever you need to, tea, wine, chocolate, and then come back with the calm voice or with silence and using your hands and pointing to the thing that you need your child to do. Because if you're using your words and you are feeling really angry, then you're just going to communicate that. Is that the beginning of an answer to whoever asked? And I can't remember. apart from it was about 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. But basically, I think throughout all the research that I've been doing myself, it all comes down to you being a a calm, collected parent, so that they can respond to you rather than react. Because if you're going to react, that's what they learn, and she's learning that from me. But sometimes, well, you're a human being, and it's just you get it, like you understand what I'm saying.
I am a human being
So
too, and I lose the plot too, and I regularly am apologizing to my kids because I have lost the plot. And I know that when I can catch myself, it's about learning more about myself and my own triggers and the things that wind me up. And when I can catch my own anger because I've understood more about myself, and then I will walk away or close the door and tell my child, because we've talked about how our brains work. And so they know when we use this, it's the Dan Siegel thing, we use this as kind of a code word. So if I do this to my children, they know to just like, let me calm down. Or, if you hold up the color red or something like that, have a code between your kids. It's just not the time to ask me something.
yeah, that's a good idea. Color thing.
Color red. And there are versions of Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain available for young kids. We're going to do the sleep workshop in a month's time, but we will definitely come back and redo the tantrums one and talk more about brains and tantrums and how to help kids with tantrums.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's move on and talk more about listening and hearing. Did I forget? Yeah, this was my final point. So what's going on in our brain when we're given a command is that we're going into confrontation. And so our whole body tenses up when we have a series of commands, and we relax and our eyes flip into our prefrontal cortex, which is the front bit of our brain, because we're going looking for the answers. And some of you said that, oh, I'm going to think about that. And so we're avoiding conflict by asking our kids a question, whereas no and giving orders can be triggers for some kids, which invite tantrums. So it's a way of avoiding some of those tantrums. Venera.
Okay, listening versus hearing. I'm just reorganizing my papers in front of me. Okay, here we go. Thank you, Laura. Before we get into what listening is and what hearing is, we need to recap on the challenges we talked about when we began. Children that just say ha or what very often, or sometimes they need you to repeat yourself. Children that just stand there and don't respond to what you're saying, even though you've said it like 3 to 5 times. Children that scream out their requests, and it's not a request anymore because they're just screaming at you, or they get frustrated. They seem to overreact, have a tantrum, or act inappropriately at the grocery store. And children that just don't follow our instructions. I want to recap our challenges, so over the next few slides, you have it in the back of your mind. We're going to break down the process of listening, and we're going to come back and see where each step in listening could have a little snag and could result in these kind of behaviors. Laura, if you could pass us to the next slide, please. Okay, but before we start breaking everything down, we're going to test your hearing. So there are 2 parts to this listening hearing thing. Hearing is being able to perceive a sound or noise or tone. You know that something's happening in the environment around you. If you can't hear, then you have an impairment and you have to go and have it checked out. Listening, on the other hand, involves hearing, paying attention to what you heard, and giving it some sort of consideration or reaction. And that's basically the difference between the 2. I want you to all have your mics on if possible, and I'm going to read to you some nonsense syllables, and you are going to repeat them. Maybe I'll ask 1 or 2 people to repeat, and if you've heard it differently, you can put up your hand and add to that. Are you ready? Can you hear me
Yeah.
clearly enough? Okay, here we go. Bodafi.
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 Oh, Daffy.
Very good. Okay, number 2. I have some sound effects to add on. Cougarilo.
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 Very nice. Number 3. Pocotikusha.
Pocotikusha.
And are we on 4 now? I'm going to turn away. I'm going to add on the sound. Tinko bashi the ko.
It sounds like you're speaking Chinese.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to come to this, and when we break it down, you'll understand why I did each step differently. But here, we need to be able to see the person. You need to be able to see my lips moving. You need to be able to see me as I talk. And it helps you to understand what I'm saying. But also, if the words don't make sense, or if you don't hear them clearly, or if they have no meaning for you, this could change the way that you hear. Some of us got the whole 5 or 6 syllables. Some of us missed the beginning, the middle, or the end. Or the sound wasn't exactly right. Instead of pa, it was ba. And these are the things that we're going to talk about when we talk about our children's listening. Let's do test number 2 before we break it down. This is going to be a sentence in English, and I want you to listen carefully and then repeat after me. Are you ready? Mary and Coco hid in the dog cart when visiting the farmer's fair yesterday.
Mary and Coco hid in the dog cart
when they visited the farm
yesterday.
Okay, so nobody actually got the whole sentence. Isn't that incredible? I find it so amusing. It's a very difficult sentence, and it's written in a way to really, test your abilities. And it uses words that we don't use very often. But the sentence was Mary and Coco, and sometimes the names are even different. Like I said Mary and Coco, but you heard, you responded using words from the first test. Hid in the dog cart, when I'm amazed that so many people got that word. Well done, everybody. When visiting the farmer's fair yesterday. And almost everybody said visiting the farm yesterday. And we're well on our way in listening skills. And even as adults, we find this difficult. So what's really going on in each step? And how can we help children build their listening skills and be able to pass all of these listening tests, or be able to acquire all of these skills that we're trying to test today? Next slide, please. Okay, there are 5 steps involved in listening. I'm just checking the time. Yes, we're good. There are 5 steps involved in listening. Our first step is something that we talked about when we said what is listening and what is hearing. Our first step is the ability to actually hear. And if you have a young child and they're about to start school, if you have a child that keeps asking you to repeat yourself or is just having difficulty with listening, your first port of call should be, can my child actually hear? As a teacher, I've seen it many, many times, surprisingly many times, that the child just hears enough to get through, but doesn't hear well enough to have a good sense of hearing. And as things get more complex as they grow up, you start to notice that they struggle more and more. So please, please, please check your child's hearing. Speak to your pediatrician, and maybe they do like a mini test, and then they can recommend or refer you on. But it's really a good place to start. If your child has had ear infections, check your child's hearing. Often when a child struggles with ear infections and they haven't learned to hear because of all the liquid that was in their ear, or it has damaged something in their ear. And sometimes, Laura and I were talking last week, and we said, sometimes we don't know that our children are having ear infections. Laura, do you want to relate your story quick?
Yeah, I mean, my middle child probably got to like age of 6 or 7, and you know, it's just so noisy at home. I probably was 5 by the time it started really driving me crazy. But we eventually went and got his hearing tested, and the ORL said, you know, your son has like 60-70% hearing loss in one ear. So it's not surprising that, you know, he's being loud because actually he can't hear you very well. And so he's just learned how to speak and volume. And he said, your child has had repeated ear infections. And I was like, no, I don't think he has. And he's like, believe me, I can see the scarring. And he explained, you don't always get a fever. Because I was like, oh, you know, if my child has a fever and kind of holds their ear and won't go to sleep, that's how I know I get ear infections. But it's not always the case.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, the same with my daughter. She had ear infections as a baby. We didn't think they have longer term effects, and actually it affected her hearing. And now she's doing okay, but it really helps to know. So, number one, can your child hear? If your child's ear is functioning and they can hear well, the next thing to check is auditory discrimination. And this is being able to hear similar sounds and be able to hear the difference. Can you hear the difference between 40 and 14? My daughter was doing really, really badly at school and struggled in math until we realized that she couldn't hear the difference between the numbers with a 0 and the numbers between 11 and 20. And practicing that and improving your auditory discrimination can really help your child hear. Can they hear the difference between tab and tag? So maybe your child is not listening. Maybe your child is not wanting to not follow your instructions. Maybe your child doesn't understand what you're saying. Number 2, language. Decoding words and attaching meaning to those words. And this is one of my favorite things to talk about, because my daughter and I argued a lot about clean your room. And she'd come back and say, yeah, my room's clean. And I'd go up there and I'd be like, it's not clean. Why do you say it's clean when it's not clean? And I realized, after sitting down and talking to her, that to her, it is clean. She picked up the thing that was on the mat in the middle of the room. Now it's clean. And in my mind, clean meant a completely different thing. And so we sat down and we said, these 3 things need to be done for the room to be clean. The bed needs to be made, the toys need to be in the box, and no books on the floor. And as she got older, we managed to change that a little bit. But check that your child understands the words that you're using. Use the same words and added gestures or a little bit of touch. So there's multiple sensory inputs coming in at the same time. So if you're working on hearing, and I can see you, and I can lip read, and I can feel your arm, or I can see your finger pointing, I have multiple ways or resources to make sense of the words that you're using. This helps us think, or puts us on the track that when your child is acting up or getting frustrated or acts inappropriately, it's not because they're not listening. Maybe they didn't understand you. Number 3, keep eye contact. In the first set of tests, I tried my very best to look away, to cover my mouth, to really block your visual stimuli of what I was saying. And as adults, you guys did a brilliant job of the exercise. I think, Laura, this is our best group, really. Visual contact, eye contact is vital to being able to hear. And it seems obvious because we look at people when we talk, but it's not a given when you're little. They don't know that if they look at you, it would be easier. They don't know that they can say, Mom, I can't see you when you look into your handbag and tell me what you need. Or you're looking at your phone and you're telling me what I need to do. But they just don't understand what you're saying because they don't have that eye connection, that eye contact, the connection, the extra visual information. A study I read last week was something like 90% of learning in school is through listening. Like they speak and the children listen. And 80% of that is being able to see the teacher and make sense of what the teacher is saying. When children couldn't see the teacher or see the mouth of the teacher moving, the ability to understand what the teacher had said went down to 45 to 60%. It's huge. Being able to see the person you talk is tremendous to helping them listen to what you're saying.
Can you just repeat that number?
So 90% is verbal.
Yeah.
What did I say? 70% is being able to see the person clearly. Yeah. 70%. And between 40 and 60% if I can't see you.
Then I don't hear it.
And I don't hear it. And that would depend on the child's listening skills. I mean, older children would manage better. Younger children would struggle more. So your child is not listening. Your child is not ignoring you. Your child probably didn't hear you or didn't understand clearly what you said. Laura, could you pass us to the next slide, please? Number 4 out of our 5 steps is filter out background noise. Now, when I played the coffee shop sound and I started to talk, it's very difficult to hear my voice over the other voices. What your brain is doing in this moment is deciding which is the most important voice, what direction it's coming from. And it almost zones in on one voice and saying, okay, we're listening to this voice, and pushes all the other sounds into the background. And you'll find as adults, some people can have a great time. Concerts, restaurants, go to the mall, go to the movies. Background sounds do not interfere with their enjoyment of any event. And you're fine, like my husband, he cannot go to very busy places. Or if he's in a very busy room, he starts to speak a little more loudly. And if you crunch chips close to his ears, he might just annihilate you right there and then. And it's because sometimes our brain cannot separate foreground and background noise. So it can't push the chip crunching sounds into the background. It's at the same volume as the TV or my voice while I'm talking to him. And that can be so annoying. And so we see children that ask you to repeat yourself because they cannot separate these two sounds. Your brain is saying both these sounds, all these sounds are important, and they don't know what you're saying because there's too many sounds going on. Or they can have sensory overload. They can have meltdown, they can feel overwhelmed, or they can just freeze because, gosh, what is going on here? I cannot make sense of it. And it's not your child not listening. It's not your child having a meltdown in the grocery store when you have to cook dinner. It's not things falling apart. It's just maybe removing the child from that environment or coming a little more closely and speaking to them so the brain can make that differentiation or can differentiate between what's an important sound and what's background. Or including eye contact, voice, and touch. The more sensory input you give to your instruction or to your voice, the easier it is for the brain to make sense of what is being said. Number 5, I'm going to take a sip of water quick. When your child is trying to listen to your set of instructions, the brain has to remember everything that was said. Like that sentence I gave you. Long, complicated, not related to your life at all. It's very difficult to remember all of it. Does anybody remember it now? Like 5 minutes later? Mary and Coco and something.
The dog cart, the farmer's fair, but I've heard it about 5 times. Oh, Gianna can do it.
All right, I do not.
And that's the thing with instructions. You have to practice this part of listening. When you play, we'll go through a list of games you can play with your child. Through practice and giving them a chance to listen and remember, they can get better at it. So when you give your child a set of instructions and they don't remember it, or they don't do what you asked, or they just don't respond, it's not because they're not listening. It's because they just don't remember. And it's really possible to not remember because your auditory information is not connected to your memory that easily, and you have to really reinforce that little brain connection. And finally, all of these 5 steps need to be done all at the same time. So while you make sense of what your mom is saying and filtering out background noise and remembering all the words and the instructions and making visual contact and staying upright and dealing with everything that's going around you in the world, it takes a little bit of time. It takes a few seconds. So when you say, get into the car, and your child is just standing there and you say, get into the car, I said, get into the car. Just give it 5 seconds. They have to do all of these 5 steps and a whole lot more and change all of that auditory information into action. They have to make it into a motor movement. And then they have to go and do it. It takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of help. They very, very little. And it takes a lot of practice. So perhaps your child is not listening to you. They just need a little bit of practice in these 5 steps. I am going to go on to the next set of slides. Thank you, Laura. Okay. I want everybody to stand up. If you can, stand up. You can see me. Okay, you're going to just give yourself a bit of a wiggle so you can refocus. I want you to put 2 feet on the floor, hands at your sides. You're going to lift one leg off the floor and balance. And I will tell you when you can put your foot down again. So ready, set, 1 foot. Foot down. We all did pretty well. Seems okay. Okay, hands at your sides, 2 feet on the ground. You're going to lift the opposite foot, the other foot. Lift. And down. There was a little bit of difference between your right and left foot, depending on which is your dominant foot. I want you to go back to your first foot. So lift the first foot again and close your eyes. And put your foot down. And now the other foot, the non-dominant foot, eyes closed. And stop. You can come back to your chairs. Who noticed the difference between right and left? Who noticed the difference between eyes open and eyes closed? Absolutely. Our balance system is regulated by our sensory system called the vestibular. And the vestibular system is a powerhouse for how our brain and body works. And Laura, if you pass us to the next slide, we can talk more about it. Thank you so much. I'm going to fetch my jersey. I put it down on the floor and now I'm cold. 1 second. Oops. Thank you. Okay. Have you ever had an ear infection and lost your balance? Or have you heard of someone that has lost their balance? Perhaps your kid. You notice that they're just a little bit off. Our balance system, run by our vestibular system, sits in the inner ear. And if you look at our image, the 3 semicircular canals pointed to by the red arrow, our balance system. And they join in almost the same, I was going to say instrument, but that's not an instrument. The cochlea and the vestibular system are almost one. If you can see that they're all purple and the blue and red arrow point to something that's joined very closely together. When hearing information comes into your inner ear, it comes in as a vibration. It passes through the semicircular canals into the cochlea. So it goes through your balance system into your ear. And then it gets passed through to the brain, and the brain perceives it as either motion, so something to do with balance and movement, or something to do with sound. I find this incredibly fascinating, that everything we hear goes through our balance system before we actually hear it. The thing about the balance system is that it's like a traffic cop for our sensory system, like body to brain. Anything that you see, touch, taste, smell, or hear goes first to the balance system, and then the information or electrical impulse is sent to the brain to say, hey, this is where you belong, this is what it means, this is what you need to do. So the hearing system works hand in hand with the balance system, but the balance system is also traffic cop to the brain. Are you still with me? Okay. The balance system then also is sort of our switch on, switch off for the brain. If you want to be alert and be attentive to something, your balance system switches your brain on. And if you want to be calm and relaxed, your balance system will switch your alertness or arousal down or off. So it can help alert you or relax you. That's why you find children that spin a lot can either get really out of control in their behavior, or they can really have enough energy, it gets almost, the energy gets out of them, and then they can calm down, depending on the types of movements that they do. Lastly, improving your balance, you can automatically boost your listening skills because of the connection between the balance system and your sensory systems, because of the balance system and the auditory system being so closely connected. By improving this passageway to the brain, improving the functioning of your balance, essentially, you can improve the way you hear. You can improve the way you listen. And I think that's just brilliant information. So how do you do it? If you're going to improve your hearing, then you really need to wake your balance system up. And your balance system lies in your inner ear, so any head movements are important. It can let you know if you're going up or down, side to side, or in circles. The more you do these things in a rhythmic way. So if you wildly go, shaking your head and feeling, you will feel disorientated. But if you rock, or if you dance, these feelings, these movements help us feel calm and help us feel good and help us feel safe and happy. And all movements, up, down, side to side, or circular, that activate the vestibular system will help you boost that system. So it's a bit of practice makes perfect. Dancing, the dance freeze game, climbing, jumping, crawling, balancing as you walk in a straight line. Like if you've seen my Instagram, we've put like a tape across our floor, colored tape, and we try and make an obstacle course, or we walk along the line as carefully as we can. Or if you're walking on the road and you have a foot on your, what is called the sidewalk, and it helps you balance. The Floor is Lava is a fantastic game. All children love it. And the musical statues, Stop and Go, and Un, deux, trois, soleil. So if they have to move and stop, balance, and then move and stop and balance, that stop and start really works our vestibular systems. Simon Says helps us with movement and listening. And Broken Telephone, auditory memory. In My Basket, auditory memory games. So as long as you're practicing all of those 5 steps in different ways and getting as much movement in as possible, your kid is well on their way to listening beautifully, or listening better, let's say. We can move to the next slide. I think it's over to you.
Thank you, Munira. I could do with one person to volunteer to be a child for our next activity. It's our last one. I'll tell you what you need to do. Maybe that'll make you feel safer. So what I want you to be is a child coming home from school, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, with your most beautiful drawing, okay, that you've just produced at school. Thank you, Rishika. Okay, and I'm going to be your parent. Okay, so just grab anything that you've got at hand, even if it's a pen, and pretend that it is this amazing bit of artwork.
Hi, Mom.
Rashika, can't you see I'm busy? So, Manira, which colour nail polish did you choose? You want to try again, Rashika?
Hi, Mom. Look what I got you.
Rashika, can't you hear the baby's crying and I'm trying to deal with the baby?
But Mom, look at this beautiful artwork.
Oh,
I've
look.
got you.
So you made something at nursery today. So right, here's what you need to do next time. I think that next time you need to use some more red on there, don't you?
No, I think it looks great.
Sweetie, what is this? Can't you even colour between the lines yet? What on earth will your teacher think? And what will she think about me? Want to go again?
But Mom, look how beautiful this is. Mom. Mom. Mommy.
Oh, sweetie, did you do that at school today?
Yes.
And that bit there, you want to tell me about it?
Yeah, it's a beautiful shell, and I've got all these things inside the shell. Do you love it?
You've got all of those things inside the shell. It looks like it took you a lot of work at school today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I used all of these colors and I loved it.
You made the red and the green. Look at that. You did that at school.
Mm-hmm. And my teacher was really happy.
No comment about the teacher. Sorry, I can't help it. Rashika, tell me what you were thinking, feeling, and deciding.
I have to be honest, I couldn't completely get into the being a child because I realized that this was a bit of a yeah, I think the thing
I'll
that
give you some prompts. How did you feel?
Yeah, I felt that, I mean, that you didn't have time for me, that you didn't want to listen to me. And I think when you were correcting my my drawing and stuff, I'm trying to think like a child now because I'm thinking too much like a mom, I guess. As a child, I would be like, oh, I've made a big mistake. Like, this is not how I'm supposed to do it. As a mom, now I know not to do that. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I realize that we're running a little bit out of time. So in the interest of time, I'm going to tell you the 5 different techniques I tried. And then we're going to put you into breakout groups for just a few minutes. So of course, on the first one, I was on the phone, I was turning around, I was focusing on something else that was more important than the picture. Then I gave my advice about what Rishika needed to do with the picture. Then I went for full out criticism. Then I tried listening without saying anything. And then finally, I used some curiosity questions to engage with my child. What we want to invite you to do in your groups, and you will feel like it's too short. We're just going to give you 2 minutes each way to practice one of the skills that you heard this evening and that you'd like to put in place with your child. So whether you can just use the example of the child coming to see the picture, or you can talk about like trying to get your child brushing your teeth, but just take 2 minutes each way to practice with that person, share the skill that you want to practice, and then go ahead. Are there any questions about that activity?
How are we going to do that?
I am going to put you all into magical breakout rooms.
Oh, wow.
And send you away, and then you will get a warning that tells you to come back and just wait till the end of that. It'll give you 60 seconds to kind of finish off your conversation. We'll be back here at 5:02, so there are only 4 minutes. And Zara, I've put you into a group that's one of 3, just in case you need to dash out. There you go. Off you go, everyone.
Hello.
Well, they'll be back in 20 seconds. We can look back at the beginning of the video and see if we need to re-record something, we'll stick that onto the end of the video.
Okay.
From me.
Welcome back, everyone.
Thanks.
And so we're coming to the end of our evening, and we'd love to hear from at least some of you and find out what's the one thing that you are taking away. If you've got 1 word or 3 words, maybe maximum, we can even get around everybody and find out what's the thing that you're going to take away from this evening. Go for it, Yasmin.
I thought the touching the ears. I really like that. I'm going to try that more with my daughter. Sort of get down to her level, massage her ears, get those going, and get her hearing checked as well.
Thank you. Catherine.
I liked what a lot of the options you gave for that last example about the picture, and especially maybe why not, sometimes just not answering, but listening, really just listening. And you don't always have to say something. You don't always have to react. Maybe it's just an idea.
Thank you. Sarah.
I'm definitely gonna make those red cards and different colored cards to hold up to let her know how I'm feeling, and she can do the same. And also asking lots of questions. I think that's a really good one. Thank you.
Thank you. Tiana's going to go and check and see if her child has had any ear infections.
He literally sometimes says to me, "Qua, qua." What the heck?
I tell you, it was a total surprise to me. He ended up having an operation to remove something, adenoids or something. So, and it all got sorted, but it was just so simple. Anyone else? Kimberly.
Balance. And questions. well, limited choice questions.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Just getting down to their level if you really want them to understand and to hear you, so they can see your mouth, and keep the answer simple rather than a long winded answer.
Thank you. Anyone we haven't heard from who'd like to share? Lauren.
Okay. I think the piece about the language and really understanding, making sure that they understand what you mean by what you're asking. I think sometimes I can forget that my daughter's 4 and that she doesn't process things the way I expect her to. So just making sure that really that she's gotten and she's in a state to understand what I'm asking of her.
Thank you. Anyone else? can't see you anymore if you were. So what's next? Munira and I are doing our next talk on sleep. I think it is in 4 weeks' time. Is that right, Munira?
That's right.
Tuesday night, we're going to be talking about getting your children to fall asleep. I know someone raised that right at the beginning. And then we also, if you have questions about the things that we shared this evening, then please write to either of us and ask. And we both also work with families individually. So if you've got questions about the brain, about that balance, about how to use movement to help your child to learn how to listen, then email Munira. If you've got questions about behavior related things, then feel free to email me. Anything else? Anything we've forgotten? Thank you, Rishika. It has been fun getting it ready as well. We're glad that you found it helpful.
A huge thank you to everybody for making the time, for taking 1.5 hours out of your evening with family to be here with us, and for the positive feedback. It's wonderful to hear that we can be helpful.
Yeah, I would add to that. If you try something and it works, then please encourage us by writing and tell us. And if you try something and it doesn't work, then write and tell us too, and we will chat about something else you can try, because there isn't one solution, like one size fits all. It is definitely a question of finding the tools that will work for your family. But it is 1 minute past, and so I'm going to let you all go. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.